Ethan Moore, a man whose name echoed through the city as a symbol of success, sat quietly in the corner of a modest cafe. His tailored suit and perfectly polished shoes did little to mask the storm brewing in his mind. To most, Ethan had it all: wealth, influence, and a future brighter than anyone could imagine. But beneath the surface, he carried a wound that never quite healed. He had grown up in a tiny, broken apartment with a mother who worked endless hours as a waitress just to keep the lights on. Those struggles shaped Ethan, instilling a promise he made to himself as a teenager. No one will ever love me for my bank account. They'll love me for me, or not at all. As he stirred his coffee absent-mindedly, his gaze fell on Sophia, a waitress who had been rushing from table to table with a warm smile that never wavered, even as exhaustion lined her face. She didn't belong to the cafe. She seemed like she belonged somewhere brighter, but life didn't care much for fairness. Ethan had been coming here for weeks, watching her, intrigued not just by her grace, but the way she treated everyone with the same kindness, whether it was a high-tipping regular or a grumpy customer who left only spare coins. Tonight, Ethan decided to take a step that would set the stage for a test he wasn't even sure he wanted the answer to. He approached Sophia after her shift ended, his voice calm yet commanding. "I have a rather unusual proposal," he began, noticing the flicker of confusion in her eyes. "There's a charity gala tomorrow night, and I need a date. You won't have to do anything except be yourself." Sophia blinked at him, trying to gauge if this was some kind of joke. "I don't even own a dress, and I'm not exactly—" She paused, searching for the right words, the kind of person who fits into events like that. "That's precisely why I chose you," Ethan replied, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Trust me, you'll fit in just fine." Reluctantly, Sophia agreed, though a mix of curiosity and doubt lingered in her mind. Why would a man like him, a man who probably had a line of elegant women waiting for his attention, choose her? The next evening, Ethan picked her up in his sleek black car. Sophia, wearing a simple yet elegant dress he had sent over earlier that day, looked breathtaking. Her nervousness, however, was palpable. "Why me?" she asked again as they drove toward the glittering venue. Ethan's grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Because I need someone who isn't impressed by all this," he said, gesturing to the city skyline. "Someone real." The gala was a spectacle of wealth, with chandeliers sparkling above and the air thick with the scent of luxury. As they entered, all eyes turned toward them, murmurs rippling through the crowd. Sophia felt out of place but held her head high, determined not to embarrass herself, or Ethan. What neither of them anticipated, however, was the arrival of Claire, Ethan's ex-fiancée. Her sharp features and designer gown made her look like she had stepped out of a magazine cover, but the venom in her smile was hard to miss. "Well, well," Claire said, approaching Ethan. "It's been a while, and who's this?" Her gaze swept over Sophia, dripping with disdain. "She's my date," Ethan replied firmly, his tone leaving no room for further questions. Claire wasn't one to back down easily. Leaning in closer to Ethan, she whispered, loud enough for Sophia to hear, "It's cute, you know, this little act of yours. But don't you think it's a bit cruel, letting her think she belongs here?" Sophia's chest tightened at Claire's words, but before she could say anything, Ethan turned to Claire with an icy calmness. "Cruelty would be letting people like you decide who belongs where," he said. The tension between the three was palpable, but it was just the beginning of the night's unraveling truths. Sophia excused herself, needing a moment to breathe. But as she stood on the balcony overlooking the city, she couldn't help but wonder if Claire had been right. What was she doing here? And why does she feel like Ethan was hiding something bigger than just his reasons for bringing her to this gala? Sophia's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned to see Ethan, his expression softer than she'd seen before. "I'm sorry about Claire," he said quietly, leaning against the railing. "It's not just about her," Sophia replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I don't belong here, Ethan. This isn't my world." Ethan studied her for a moment, the vulnerability in her eyes stirring something he hadn't felt in years. "You're wrong," he said firmly. "Belonging isn't about money or status. It's about being true to who you are. And you, Sophia, have more authenticity in you than anyone in that room."
His words hung in the air. But before she could respond, they were interrupted by a commotion inside the ballroom. Someone was loudly calling Ethan's name. It was a man in his late 50s, impeccably dressed but with a sharp, calculating glint in his eye. Sophia watched as Ethan's jaw tightened. "Who's that?" she asked. "My uncle," Ethan muttered, his tone filled with reluctance. The man, Mr. Prescott, strode toward them with an air of authority. "Ethan," he began, his voice smooth but condescending. "Still playing these little games, I see." His eyes shifted to Sophia. "And you must be the latest experiment?" Sophia bristled at the comment, but Ethan stepped between them, his tone sharp. "Leave her out of this, Uncle. Whatever you want to say it to me." Mr. Prescott smirked. "Fine. Let's not pretend anymore. Everyone knows why you're here. Another one of your attempts to prove that wealth doesn't matter. But let me tell you something, Ethan. You can dress it up however you like, but the world will always see her as..." He paused for effect. "Less." Sophia's heart sank. But before she could walk away, Ethan grabbed her hand. "Enough," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. "You don't know her. You don't know anything about her." Turning to Sophia, he added, "Come with me." He led her out of the building and into the quiet of the parking lot. "I owe you the truth," he said, finally breaking the silence. Sophia looked at him, her emotions a mix of anger and confusion. "What truth, Ethan? That you brought me here as some kind of social experiment? To prove a point to people like your uncle?" Ethan flinched but nodded. "At first, yes. I wanted to show them that worth isn't defined by what's in your bank account. But it stopped being about them the moment I got to know you. You're not just part of the plan, Sophia. You're everything I didn't realize I was looking for." Sophia's breath hitched, but before she could respond, a sleek black car pulled up. Claire stepped out, her expression unreadable. "I hate to interrupt," she began, "but I thought you might want to know something, Ethan." She handed him an envelope. "This was sent to my father's office by someone very close to you." Ethan opened the envelope, his eyes scanning the contents. His face darkened. Sophia could see the storm brewing in his expression. "It's a contract," he said slowly, "offering someone money to leave me alone." Sophia frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," Ethan said bitterly, "that my uncle has been meddling again. He tried to bribe you to leave, didn't he?" Sophia's eyes widened. "What?" "No, he never approached me." Claire, oddly sincere for once, nodded. "It seems she passed your test without even knowing it, Ethan. Maybe she's not as out of place as you think." Ethan turned to Sophia, his voice softening. "This is what I wanted to avoid. People like him trying to control my life, my choices. I didn't mean to drag you into this mess, but I can't lose you now." Sophia hesitated, her heart racing. "Ethan, this isn't just about you proving something to them. It's about whether or not I can trust you to see me as more than just an example." Ethan stepped closer, his eyes locking with hers. I see you, Sophia, the real you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that I don't care about anything else. For the first time that night, Sophia smiled. A small, tentative smile that carried the weight of everything unspoken. Then maybe, she said quietly, we can figure this out. Together. The night ended not with grand gestures, but with an understanding that sometimes love isn't about proving a point. It's about letting someone see who you are, flaws, fears, and all, and trusting them to stay.